They sent me a wedding invitation like I was a stranger. At the ceremony, they handed me a parking vest instead of a corsage. I smiled through the shame, stood outside the frame, and watched them erase me. But they forgot one thing: I raised the boy, I built the family, and I still hold the ink. They wrote me out of their pictures, so I rewrote the ending. Hello. My name is Eleanor and I am 67 years old. The envelope felt cold in my hands, like it had been mailed from another life. The kind you expect from a stranger, not your own grandson. I opened it slowly at the kitchen table, my teacup still steaming. Together with their families, Daniel Holloway and Kayla Bennett request the honor of your presence. No dear grandma. No scribbled note. Not even a signature. Just a mass-printed card. I ran my thumb over Daniel's name. I used to write it on his school lunches. I used to hold his hand crossing the street. The phone rang just as I was folding the invitation back into its envelope. Hello? Hi, Eleanor. It's Bree. My stomach tightened. Oh. Hello. We just wanted to make sure you got the invitation. I did, I said softly. Came in the mail this morning. Great. Just checking. We really hope you'll come. It's going to be beautiful. Very tasteful. I imagine it will be, I said, trying to sound polite. She cleared her throat. We're keeping it small. Just family and a few close friends. So, yeah. Hope you can attend. Not we'd love to see you. Not Daniel can't wait to have you there. Just, logistics. Like I was an obligation. I'll make arrangements, I said. Perfect. All right, then. She hung up without even a goodbye. I sat still for a long while, listening to the silence. Later that afternoon, I opened my closet. I touched the soft fabric of my dark green dress, the one Daniel once called Grandma's holiday armor. Too heavy, I murmured. Too much. I pulled out a lighter one. Pale blue. Worn only once. I had bought it for Eric's promotion dinner, before Bree insisted I stay home to avoid overwhelming the evening. I held the dress against myself and studied my reflection. Gray hair pulled into a soft bun. Skin lined but steady. Eyes, tired. Nothing looked quite right. I set the dress down and turned away. That evening, Judith came by, holding a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine. She saw the invitation on the table before I could tuck it away. Wedding, huh? Daniel's, I said. Judith raised an eyebrow. Finally? I nodded. She opened the bottle and poured us each a glass. So, what's the plan? Are we going dress hunting? I already have a dress. Then why do you look like someone just canceled Christmas? I gave her a tired smile. It's just a feeling. Judith settled across from me. Talk to me. It was a printed card. No note. No call from Daniel. Bree phoned to make sure I received it. That's all. Judith frowned. He didn't call you himself? Not even a text. I don't like that. Neither do I. She paused. Do you want to go? I picked up my wine, swirled it. I don't know. I helped raise him, Judith. I was there for his first steps. For every birthday cake. Every scraped knee. I kept him when Bree and Eric went to those retreats. And now I'm just someone who gets the generic invite. Judith reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You're not just someone. They're just forgetting who you are. I nodded, but I didn't believe her. Not tonight. After she left, I stood by the window, the blue dress still hanging from the doorframe. The porch light flickered. The world was getting quieter. Smaller. The next morning, I called the hotel listed on the back of the invitation and booked a room. "Will you be needing transportation from the airport, Miss Holloway?" the woman asked. "No," I said. "I'll drive myself." "Very well. We look forward to seeing you." "Do you?" I almost asked. But I just thanked her and hung up. I placed the dress in a garment bag, zipped it up, and hung it gently by the door. As I passed the mirror again, I didn't look away this time. "I'm going," I whispered. "But I'm not sure they'll even see me." The iron gates creaked open as I turned onto the long gravel drive. The estate was grand, white stone walls, floor-length windows, roses trimmed to perfection. It looked like something from a lifestyle magazine, not a place where memories were made. I parked near the guest house, a small structure tucked behind the trees, and stepped out, clutching my garment bag and suitcase. "Hello?" I called gently as I approached the front steps. A young woman in black slacks and a headset popped out from behind the main house. "Hi," she said, not smiling. "Name?" "Eleanor Holloway. I'm Daniel's grandmother." She scrolled something on her phone. "Right. You're in the guest cottage. Room 2B. I waited for her to offer help, or a map, or at least some warmth. But she just turned and walked off, still speaking into her earpiece. I stood there for a moment, suitcase handle still clutched, before making my way around the building. Inside, the room smelled faintly of lemon polish. Clean, but impersonal. A small bed. A window facing the parking lot. No welcome basket, no note. I set my dress on the narrow closet rod and sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded tightly in my lap. I found the main house after wandering a bit. A line of cars filled the drive, caterers unloading trays, florists trimming centerpieces. I stepped through the back door into a swirl of activity. "Oh," Bree said when she saw me. "You're here early." "You asked me to be," I said, smiling gently. "I thought I could help with setup. I used to do centerpieces back in the day, remember?" She tilted her head, barely. "We've got it covered this time. Professional team. It's easier that way." "Of course," I murmured. "Where's Eric?" "In the drawing room, I think. Or with the photographer. I'll let him know you're here." But she didn't move. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, hoping to find someone familiar. Judith wasn't arriving until tomorrow, and the air here felt cold despite the warmth in the room. I passed Eric in the hall. He looked up and froze like he hadn't expected to see me. "Hi, Mom," he said quickly. I opened my arms. "It's good to see you, sweetheart." He gave me a half hug. His hand barely touched my back. "You doing all right?" I asked. "Busy," he said. "Lot going on." "I know the feeling. I remember your father's retirement party. We were up until midnight making name cards." Eric gave a tight smile. "Different times. Different people," I added softly. Daniel walked in while I was sipping water near the side buffet. He looked dashing in his suit, taller than I remembered, with a new sharpness in his jaw. Bree must have picked out his shoes, too polished, too stiff. "Grandma," he said, voice light. "Daniel." I reached out. He hugged me, but quick, a brush of arms and a polite squeeze. "You look beautiful," I said, cupping his cheek. He laughed. "Stop, you'll make me blush." "I can't help it. You'll always be the little boy who used to cry when your peanut butter sandwiches were cut the wrong way." He grinned, but his eyes darted to the doorway. "Kayla's looking for me," he said. "We're doing a mock walk down." "Of course," I said. "Go on." He paused. "Glad you made it." I smiled, but he was already gone. That night, I sat on the patio of the guest house with a small blanket around my shoulders. The air was cool and smelled of night-blooming jasmine. I sipped lukewarm tea from a styrofoam cup I found near the coffee machine. From the main house, I heard laughter, glass clinking, music drifting. I walked closer, toward the open French doors, staying in the shadows. We wanted elegant, clean lines, Bree was saying. That's why we're skipping extended family photos. It just complicates the aesthetic. Someone else chimed in. Totally. Less is more. A man I didn't recognize laughed. Honestly, keeping certain guests out of the album saves us from a lot of retouching later. They all laughed. My hands tightened around the cup. I knew that laugh. It was the same kind used when I walked into a room and someone quickly changed the subject. I backed away before they could see me. Back in my room, I checked the printed schedule they'd tucked into the welcome envelope. No mention of me on the rehearsal dinner list. No assigned seat. No corsage. No grandparent tribute. I picked up my phone and texted Judith. You still coming tomorrow? A minute later. Wouldn't miss it. You okay? I stared at the screen for a long moment. I will be. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because the pain had become something else. Not tears. Not anger. Just space. A quiet space where something used to live. The morning sun hadn't fully risen when I stepped out of the guest house. The air was still, except for the hum of delivery vans and the faint sound of clinking dishes from the catering tent. I made my way toward the main house, hoping, maybe foolishly, that someone would say, "We saved you a spot inside," or "Let me help you find your seat." Instead, I saw Bree standing near the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, clipboard in hand. "There you are," she said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "We've got a tiny issue." I smiled politely. "I'm happy to help however I can." She stepped closer and lowered her voice, as if this were a secret favor. "So, the valet team's short. 2 of the drivers canceled. We need someone to direct cars and handle keys." I blinked. "You mean, like parking?" "Yes," she said quickly. "It would really help. Keep things flowing. It'll keep you busy." I let out a small laugh. That's a joke, right?" Bree didn't laugh. I stared at her. "You want me to park cars? At my grandson's wedding? It's just for the arrivals. Really quick. I figured you'd want to contribute somehow." I looked down at my shoes. I had polished them that morning, thinking they might finally take me somewhere worth standing. "There's no chair for me?" She glanced at her clipboard. "All the reserved seating is filled, but there's open seating in the back, if you finish in time." "No corsage?" I asked, almost whispering. Bree offered a shrug. "We didn't think you'd want one." I stood there, trying to process it all. The silence stretched so long that Bree finally handed me a reflective vest and a ring of labeled keys. "You're doing us a huge favor," she said, already turning away. "Just line them up neatly, okay?" Eric passed by as I made my way toward the gravel lot. He looked like he wanted to avoid me, but I caught his sleeve. "Eric." He turned. "Mom. You knew about this?" He hesitated. "We're all pitching in, okay? Bree's been stressed." I stared at him. "You really think this is what I came for?" "I think it's better than sitting alone." I dropped his sleeve. "Then I hope you enjoy sitting with everyone else." He didn't respond. By mid-morning, guests began arriving. Fancy cars, polished shoes, people I didn't recognize stepping out and handing me their keys like I was staff. "Thank you," one man said without looking at me. Another woman waved her fingers vaguely. "Do you validate?" I shook my head. "No, ma'am. Just parking." She dropped the keys into my hand like they were crumbs. Each engine I turned off felt heavier than the last. I lined the cars up in 2 perfect rows, like I used to line Daniel's toy trucks when he was a boy. Back then, he clapped and called me brilliant. Now, no one clapped. By the time Judith arrived, I had parked 11 cars. My dress was damp with sweat under the vest, my low heels covered in dust. Her car rolled to a stop. I tried to turn before she saw me, but it was too late. "Eleanor," she said, stepping out. "Why are you?" "Helping," I said, voice flat. "They needed someone to park cars." Her mouth opened. "You're joking." I handed her a parking stub and forced a smile. "Apparently, it's what I'm good for." "No," she said firmly. "No." "Where's Bree? Where's Eric?" I shook my head. "It doesn't matter. Just go inside." She grabbed my arm. "Are you okay?" "I will be." When the last car arrived, I slipped off the vest and sat on a bench near the edge of the lot. I could hear the string quartet playing, the sound muffled through thick hedges. Laughter floated above the music. Champagne corks popped. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. Not from exhaustion, but from something else. I'd always told myself I didn't need grand gestures. That quiet love was enough. But this wasn't quiet. It was cold. This wasn't being forgotten. This was being reassigned. I thought of the photos being taken. The laughter. The programs with names printed in gold. My name wouldn't be there. Judith found me 15 minutes later with a cold bottle of water. "I spoke to the planner," she said. "There's no seat for you on the front row. Not even in the second. Didn't think there would be." I told her that was unacceptable. I smiled weakly. "Judith, don't fight battles I've already lost." She sat beside me. "You didn't lose anything. They just forgot what you've given." I looked out at the long line of parked cars, each one gleaming. They didn't forget. They just decided I wasn't needed anymore. Judith took my hand. That moment, the feel of someone remembering, was almost too much. But inside me, something didn't break. It sharpened. If they saw me as a ghost, I'd haunt them in silence. I'd rewrite my role, not with shouting or tears, but with choices they couldn't undo. This wouldn't be the end of my story. They didn't get to write the final page. I stood near the back doors, the edge of the ballroom cool against my shoulder. I had taken off the reflective vest, but the imprint of it still clung to my dress, creased fabric, faint smell of sun and dust. Voices echoed across the garden as the photographer called out. "Immediate family, please. We'll start with the parents and grandparents of the groom." I stepped forward instinctively, smoothing my skirt, brushing my hair behind my ears. That's when I saw her. Daniel's other grandmother, Marlene, Eric's ex-mother-in-law from his first marriage, was being guided to the front row by one of the planners. They adjusted her scarf, fluffed her sleeves. Bree handed her a delicate bouquet. I waited. No one looked at me. I took a small step toward the group, heart thudding. Then Bree spotted me. "Oh, Eleanor," she said, walking over quickly. Her smile was taut. "Let's keep it clean for the photographer, okay?" I blinked. "Clean?" She lowered her voice. "Symmetry, you know? The photos are modern. We're going for a curated feel." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Behind her, Daniel stood with his arm around Kayla. He glanced over. Our eyes met. I waited for him to say something. Anything. He looked away. I stepped back. One step. Then another. Until I was behind the hedge. I found a stone bench behind the floral arch, partially hidden from view. The laughter from the photo shoot drifted like music from a party I had once belonged to. I sat down slowly, knees stiff. My hands rested in my lap, still holding the small tissue Judith had slipped me earlier, just in case. But I didn't cry. I stared at my shoes. Dusty from the gravel. Scuffed from pacing the lot. I had once rocked Daniel to sleep in those shoes. Cooked his favorite pasta in them. Stood beside him during school plays, scraped knees, lost pets. And today, I wasn't photogenic enough to be family. It didn't break me. But it hollowed something out. I pulled my phone from my purse, needing something to do, something to anchor me. I opened the Notes app, not to write, but to scroll through old grocery lists and recipes. Then I saw the folder I'd named Martin's Words. My finger hovered. Then tapped. There it was, the line I'd saved from one of his old letters. If they forget your worth, remind them, without raising your voice. He had written that the year Eric got promoted and suddenly had too many meetings to visit. Martin had slipped the letter into my gardening journal like a secret code. I read the line again. Without raising your voice. I folded the phone back into my purse. Judith found me 10 minutes later, her heels crunching softly on the grass. There you are, she said. I didn't look up. They're doing family shots. I saw, she replied. Then sat beside me. And I saw you standing there. Waiting. Bree said she wanted it clean. Judith scoffed. She said what? Clean. Curated. Symmetrical. I smiled bitterly. Guess I make the photos look complicated. She's lucky I wasn't within earshot, Judith muttered. I kept thinking Daniel would say something. Judith was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You don't need a photograph to prove you raised that boy." I know, I said. But I would have liked one. Just one. We sat in silence as the garden noise faded behind us. I think I'm going to leave early, I said softly. Judith turned. What? I've been here. I've smiled. I've helped. I've been erased. I don't think I need to stay for dinner just to be seated near the catering exit. Judith exhaled slowly. Are you sure? Yes. Then I'll go with you. No, I looked at her, really looked. Stay. Eat. Drink the good wine. You deserve it. She nodded, eyes glassy. You'll be okay? I gave her the smallest smile I could manage. I've survived worse than a skipped photo. Back in my room, I changed out of the dress and into slacks. I folded the garment carefully, as if it were still waiting for its moment. I zipped my bag, then paused. On the nightstand sat the wedding program. I flipped it open. The family list stopped with Eric. No, survived by Eleanor Holloway. No mention of me at all. I folded it in half and slid it into the trash. Then I took out a fresh sheet of paper. I wrote just one sentence. Thank you for the invitation. I sealed it in an envelope, left it on the desk, and walked out the door. The house was still when I returned. Not quiet, still. That thick kind of silence that wraps around you when the disappointment hasn't fully settled, but the ache has already begun. I set my bag by the door and slipped off my shoes, each step echoing louder than it should. The smell of lavender from the diffuser greeted me faintly, trying to be warm, but it felt distant. I walked straight to the attic stairs. The box was where I'd left it, tucked behind a stack of old photo albums and a broken lamp Martin never got around to fixing. Dark wood. Brass hinges. The corner still had the scratch from the day Daniel dropped his toy truck on it. I carried it down to the kitchen, placed it gently on the table, and opened the lid. His handwriting greeted me before anything else. In case the world forgets who you are. That's what he'd written on the first envelope. I unfolded the first letter slowly, the paper soft at the edges from age. Ellie. I know you'll open this when something shifts. If things are still good, put it back. If not, read on. You gave everything to this family. And I don't know what they'll do when I'm gone. I'd like to believe they'll remember, but just in case. I've tucked away a few things. You'll find the documents in the bottom drawer. Do what you need to, on your terms. Love you, always. M. I pressed the page to my chest and let my eyes close. I needed this today, Martin, I whispered. I pulled out the false bottom of the box. He'd shown it to me once, during a stormy night when the power had gone out. Said it was his backup drawer. There it was. A copy of our trust agreement. And another, an unsigned amendment. Dated 6 months before his passing. I skimmed the words carefully. It was clear, Martin had moved a portion of our savings, the lake cottage, and the remainder of his private account into a separate clause. If signed, it would have granted me sole authority to reassign those assets outside of the main inheritance structure. He never filed it. But he left it for me. A backup. In case things went wrong. Things had gone wrong. I pulled out my phone and dialed Judith. She picked up on the second ring. Eleanor? I need your brother's number, I said. Michael. The attorney. Judith paused. What happened? I found something Martin left behind. Quietly. Thoughtfully. Like always. You're not doing something rash, are you? No, I said, breathing in deeply. I'm doing something mine. Michael met me 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop across town. He wore the same wool coat I remembered from Judith's birthday party last year. I reviewed everything you sent, he said, spreading out the papers. The unsigned amendment isn't enforceable on its own, but it gives us intent. That matters. I don't want to take anything from them, I said quietly. I just don't want to be at their mercy anymore. He nodded. Then we can work around it. You're still a living trustee. That gives you legal flexibility. Can I transfer my share? Set up something independent? Absolutely. And we can do it without involving them until everything's finalized. I looked at the papers again. Martin had made sure I wasn't left empty-handed, not emotionally, and not legally. I want to move the cottage. And the remaining account. And I want to establish a trust, just not in their name. For who, then? I smiled faintly. I'll figure that out later. For now, I just want the door open. Back home, I brewed a fresh pot of tea and sat at the kitchen table as the late afternoon light fell across the old wooden box. I began making notes, who had shown up when I needed them. Who hadn't? What causes I believed in. The women's shelter I once donated to. The literacy program I used to volunteer for. The neighbors who checked on me every winter. They deserved something more than a name in a will. I wasn't angry anymore. I was aware. And once you wake up in that kind of awareness, it's hard to go back to silence. That night, Judith came over with a lemon tart and 2 forks. You're glowing, she said, setting down her purse. I'm just remembering who I used to be. I never forgot, she said, sitting across from me. I looked down at Martin's letters again. He didn't either. Judith picked one up and read the salutation. Ellie. He was the only one who ever called me that without trying to shorten me. Then let's make sure that voice isn't lost. I took one last sip of tea and stood. The past had given me all it could. Now it was time to do the same, on my terms. Greg's office sat above a bakery on Maple Street. No brass sign, no grand entrance. Just a plain wooden door with frosted glass that read G. Marston, Estate and Family Law. I liked that. Quiet. Respectful. No performance. He stood when I walked in. Gray suit, silver tie, no nonsense in his eyes. Mrs. Holloway, he said, offering his hand. Please. Come in. It's just Eleanor, I said, shaking it. And thank you for fitting me in so quickly. I reviewed the materials your friend Judith passed along. Interesting history. I'm ready to act, I said, sliding the folder across the table. And I want to do it cleanly. No confrontation. No noise. He opened the file and nodded slowly. We can do that. We spent over an hour combing through the documents. Martin's unsigned amendment. The asset lists. My trustee rights. The ownership of the lake cottage, still jointly titled but dormant since his passing. Greg circled a few lines with a red pen. You have every legal right to move forward with reassigning these assets. No permissions required. And the shares in Holloway Woodworks? I asked. Still in your name. 10%, untouched. Likely forgotten. Good, I said. I want them in a new trust. Along with the cottage. And the Holloway Fund, what's left of it. He looked up. You're certain? Yes. Everything I still own, I want pulled from the family structure. Who are the new beneficiaries? Myself. Judith, under a care provision, not a cash handout. And the rest, I paused. I wanted to go to the Broadleaf Women's Center. Greg blinked. The shelter on 8th Street? I used to cook there on Sundays. It's never had reliable funding. He smiled. A quiet rewrite. I like it. By mid-afternoon, the papers were drafted. I signed each one slowly, deliberately. With every stroke of the pen, the weight on my chest began to loosen. Greg slid the final set back toward me. We'll file these quietly. It will take a few weeks to fully transfer, but from today forward, your assets are your own. Thank you. Do you want any letters included for the others? Yes, I said, reaching into my purse. I handed him 3 sealed envelopes. To be mailed after final registration, I added. He nodded. Consider it done. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the light shift through the oak trees. Judith joined me after dinner, carrying 2 slices of blueberry pie and her usual silk scarf tied carelessly around her neck. Well, she asked, setting the plate down. It's done. She smiled. You don't look triumphant. I'm not. I just feel, still. Like I finally stopped asking for something they were never going to give me. She reached over and took my hand. You gave them everything. I know, I said softly. That's why I took back what I had left. Later that night, I stared at my phone for a long while before pressing call on Daniel's number. It rang twice. Grandma? Hi, sweetheart. A pause. Hi. I breathed in slowly. I'm not calling about the wedding. Okay. I just wanted to ask you something. Do you remember when we built the treehouse in the sycamore tree? He laughed, small, surprised. Yeah. You let me paint the sign. Club Awesome. It dripped everywhere. You cried when the raccoons moved in. He chuckled again. I told Kayla that story last week. I was thinking about it today, I said. Just thinking. Silence stretched. Then a faint voice in the background, who are you talking to? Daniel replied, muffled, it's my grandma. I'll be off in a sec. Bree's voice snapped back, we're already late, Daniel. Sorry, he returned to the line. I've gotta go, Grandma. I know. I'll call you later. I didn't respond. And he didn't call back. But I didn't cry. I put the phone down gently and returned to the kitchen. I took out a blank card, wrote the name Amara, and slipped it into the trust file. I didn't know who she was yet. But someday, a girl like her would walk into Broadleaf and find a bed, a book, and a safe place to rest. And maybe that would be enough. The morning sun filtered through my bedroom curtains as I zipped up the blue dress. Not just any blue dress, his favorite one. Martin always said it made my eyes look like storm clouds. I hadn't worn it in years. I clipped on the pearl earrings. Slipped on the flats. Folded the 3 envelopes with care and tucked them into my purse. I didn't RSVP. I wasn't invited. But I was expected. Whether they admitted it or not. The valet outside Bree's house didn't recognize me. Ma'am, is your name on the list? I'm family, I said, stepping past him with a nod. Inside, soft jazz played over laughter and clinking mimosas. I walked in slowly, my heels silent against the tile. Bree stood by the mimosa bar in a cream blouse, one hand resting on her hip like she owned the air in the room. Her face shifted when she saw me. "Eleanor?" "Good morning," I said calmly. She blinked. "I didn't know you were invited?" I smiled. "You didn't know a lot of things." Eric was near the buffet, frozen mid-bite of some tiny quiche. His face paled like he'd seen a ghost. Danielle looked up from a conversation with Kayla, visibly startled. I walked toward them with measured steps. No scenes. No drama. Just truth, delivered in paper. "Eric," I said softly, handing him the envelope. He stared at it like it might burn his fingers. "What is this?" "You'll find out soon enough." I turned. Bree. She didn't take a step forward. "If this is some kind of..." "It's not," I cut in. "Just a note. Something to remember me by." I handed her the envelope. Her fingers snatched it as if she could undo it by force alone. Finally, I approached Daniel. My voice softened. "Sweetheart." He swallowed. "Grandma, what's going on?" "I just wanted to give you this," I said, holding out the smallest envelope. "I won't stay. This isn't about punishment." He took it with both hands. "It's a reminder," I added, "of who knew you first." He looked down at it, silent. Then I turned, walked through the hallway, and stepped back out into the morning. At home, Judith was waiting on the porch, 2 mugs in hand. "Well?" she asked. I took the tea and sat beside her. I walked in. I walked out. No one shouted. No one begged. She grinned. "What did you write them?" Eric got the truth. Everything I did with the trust. Why I pulled out. Why I'm done playing quiet. "And Bree?" I chuckled. A printed copy of the text she sent the planner. The one that said, "Let's have the old lady park cars," keeps her out of photos. Judith choked on her sip. "You didn't." "I did. With a photo of me in the vest." "She'll know it came from you." "She'll block me by sundown," Judith muttered. "And Daniel?" she asked gently. I told him 3 words. "I loved you first." Judith's eyes softened. "That's all?" "It's enough." We sat there in silence, sipping tea. The wind rustled the wind chimes Martin installed years ago. The sun warmed the wood beneath our feet. Judith nudged me. "Think they've opened them yet?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "Don't you want to see their faces?" I smiled. They spent weeks making me invisible. It's only fair that my silence speaks louder. Inside my house, the documents were filed. The accounts moved. The future rewritten, quietly, legally, permanently. They couldn't undo it. They could only read. And remember. The first call came at 9:12 a.m. I was slicing a peach for breakfast when the screen lit up, "Eric." I stared at the name for a moment. Then I answered. "Hello? What the hell is this?" His voice came in hot, already shaking with anger. "Good morning, Eric." Don't do that calm thing." "What did you do, Mom?" I opened that letter and nearly passed out. "I made some adjustments." "You moved the cottage. The business shares. The family fund." "I moved my share. The one your father left me. The part that never belonged to you. You went behind our backs." "No," I said firmly. "I went in a direction you never thought I could. You always said family comes first. And for years," I said, "I believed I was still part of yours." He went silent for a beat. Then, "Do you have any idea what this will look like?" "What Bree will?" I pressed end call. Quietly. Cleanly. The second call came 3 hours later. "Daniel." I hesitated this time. But then I answered. "Grandma?" His voice was smaller than I remembered. I got your note. I sat down at the table. I know. I didn't know what Bree said about the parking. I didn't know until after. And the photos, she said there was a system. You don't need to explain, I said. Not for her. But for me, he said, voice cracking. I should have said something. I saw you standing there. I saw the vest. I should have walked over. You didn't have to fight for me, I said. You just had to see me. I did, he whispered. Too late. Silence stretched. I let it. I'm sorry, he added. I'm really sorry. I felt the edge of my breath catch. Not quite a sob, but the space before one. Daniel, I said softly, I didn't need to be honored. I didn't even need a corsage. I just needed to be remembered as more than a woman in the lot with car keys. He sniffed. You were the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered when I was little. And then you forgot. I didn't mean to. I know, I said. But you still did. That afternoon, Judith showed up with a newspaper clipping and a bag of tangerines. You're trending in the family group chat, she said, grinning. Apparently, Bree's been rage texting emojis for 20 minutes straight. I haven't heard from her. Of course not, she said. Humiliation only calls when it thinks it can still win. We sat on the porch. The breeze was soft today. Birds loud. The world felt larger again. I reached into the mail pile and pulled out a thick envelope. From Broadleaf, I said, opening it. Inside were handwritten letters, each one from a woman at the shelter. Judith leaned closer as I began to read them. You don't know me, but I slept in a safe bed last night because of you. My daughter got her first hot meal from a kitchen you helped fund. We call you Miss Blue Dress. Our guardian. Our matriarch. I placed a hand over my chest. My eyes stung, but the tears didn't come. Matriarch, I whispered. Imagine that. You earned it, Judith said. And then some. That evening, Greg called. Just a quick update, he said. Eric tried to push back through an informal claim. We shut it down. Legally, you're untouchable now. Thank you. Do you want to counter or respond? No, I said. Let them stew. That silence belongs to them now. He chuckled. I'll put it in lawyer terms, well played. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I sat alone on the swing out back. The same swing Daniel helped install when he was 10. He carved his initials onto the armrest. I traced them now with my thumb. They'd erased me from the seating charts. The photos. The brunch. But I'd written myself back in, somewhere they couldn't crop out. No spotlight. No applause. Just quiet power. Planted like roots in soil they thought was theirs. The woman they left behind at the curb? She's gone. The one who replaced her? She doesn't park cars. She drives her own. The doors to the community center opened with a soft click. The scent of fresh paint and new paper floated through the air, soft, warm, welcoming. I stepped inside, heels tapping lightly on the polished floor. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, dancing across the linoleum tiles. Children's voices echoed down the hall, high, chaotic, full of life. And there, above the main entrance, hung the brass plaque. Holloway Center for Women and Families. In honor of Martin Holloway. Founded in quiet strength by his wife. I traced the edge of the plaque with my fingertips. Martin would have hated the attention. But he would have loved what it meant. A group of children darted around the corner, laughing. One little girl stopped in front of me, her eyes wide and curious. You're the lady from the picture, she said. Oh? I smiled. What picture? In the room with the bookshelf. The one where you're holding that red book. The helper said you started this place. I suppose I did, I said gently. She grinned, missing her 2 front teeth. I want to have a room with books too. Then you should, I told her. And one with windows. Big ones. She nodded solemnly and ran off after the others. I watched her go, heart full. Judith arrived just after lunch, balancing 2 paper cups of coffee and a small tote bag. You beat me here, she said, handing me a cup. I needed to walk through once more. I saw the new plaque. They added the quiet strength line. I smiled into my sip. It felt right. Judith pulled out a slim package from her bag and handed it to me. What's this? Something you'll want to see, she said, a bit too lightly. I slid the ribbon off and opened the lid. Inside was a small white book, Bree's wedding album. The official one. I flipped through slowly. The venue looked perfect. The flowers bloomed in full color. There were group shots, candids, posed glamour shots. Marlene had a page. Bree's mother had 2. I had none. Not a single image. Not a blurry frame in the corner. Not even the parking lot. Judith reached over. I thought you should know. I already did, I said. I closed the book, calm and steady, and walked to the nearby recycling bin. I tore the album in half, then again. The paper split easily. Judith raised an eyebrow. Cathartic? No, I said. Just trash. We sat on the back bench overlooking the garden. A few women were planting herbs while 2 kids filled watering cans from the hose. It's strange, I said after a while. I thought being erased from that wedding would haunt me. And now? I watched the little girl from earlier carry her tiny shovel across the dirt, completely unaware of me, yet alive in something I helped build. Now I see it clearly, I said. They edited me out of a party. But I wrote myself into a place that matters. Judith nodded. And into people who remember. I looked at her, thankful. You stayed with me, I said. You let me, she replied. My phone buzzed gently in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. A message from Daniel. Saw the center online. Proud of you. Can we talk soon? I didn't reply. Not yet. Some things deserve space. Inside the main room, the shelves were filled with books I had donated. Martin's old dictionary. My favorite cookbooks. A stack of children's stories I used to read to Daniel. There were no portraits. No big dedications. Just a laminated sign near the entrance. You are safe here. You are seen. You are enough. I wrote that myself. Back on the porch, Judith nudged me. You ever think about moving again? Maybe. Somewhere near the lake cottage? I looked out at the garden again. No, I said. I think I'll stay close to this place for a while. Judith smiled. You finally have your own table. And I set every chair myself. I stood up and brushed the crumbs from my skirt. The sun was lower now. The kids were chasing butterflies. A woman in a red apron waved at me from the community kitchen window. She called me Miss Eleanor. I waved back. And in that moment, I felt seen. Not as the grandmother on the edges. Not as the woman in the parking lot. Not as the forgotten seat at someone else's celebration. But as myself. Standing where I chose to be. In the center of something real. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more true feeling stories about silent strength and second chances. Your voice matters, just like hers did.